Okay, so a lot of people don't really know how to tell engaging good stories, and I'm here to tell you what I know so far because I don't think there's one story structure that works for everyone, but there is a few that I think definitely provide a good level of, if you want a good structure for a good video, then I kind of have something that works. So, here's the thing, we just released our purpose video on our main channel. You can see it's like your life can be a movie, stop waiting, right? You can check that out after. And right now it's doing really well. And I think the reason is because we really got our story, our scripting together. And we realized that we can talk about any topic as long as it relates to the big point. So I'll kind of use this video, the purpose video, as a guide to how we told a good story. And so let me start from here. Our idea was we want to help people find their purpose, right? We want to help people get to a place in their life where they can follow something throughout the rest of their life, right? We had that in mind. It's a video on purpose. Now, we wanted it to be a little bit creative. So we came from a different approach. Your life can be a movie. Because we knew that in movies you need a purpose, right? Now, this is just our idea formation, our creative idea formation. It just came to us at once. There's no formula for that. It just kind of comes to you. But how do we relate the idea of a movie into purpose? This is the first rule of almost any story. Every single point that you talk about or every idea that you relate to in your story should relate to that big idea at the top. So I kind of wrote this out right here. So if you can see that, there's a start to everything, right? So that start would be, for example, we're thinking we want this to be a purpose video, right? That's kind of the idea formation. That's in our mind. And we think, okay, we want it to be on movies. And that's would be our story one right there. Story one. And we want our story one to be how can we make your life a movie? But the point right here, if you see point one is how does this tie into purpose? You see what I'm doing here? So it'd be the entire idea of the video is purpose, right? We want to help people find their purpose so that their life can be a movie. The first story is how movies work. And movies work best, we talk about this in the video, by having a purpose that they're trying to reach. Every line in the movie, every single scene should tie into that one purpose, right? This is pretty much that movie was on storytelling as well, which is really interesting. But we want the point of that story that we're going to tell to be about purpose, right? So what I mean by this is if I'm trying to tell you about how I used, I don't know, cars to sell my candies better, right? I would say, okay, I opened a car business and, I didn't really know how to run it, but I started placing candies inside of my sales room where I would talk one on one to people. I'm like, oh, do you want to buy this candy for 50 cents? They'll be like, oh, yeah. Now the story is no longer about the cars itself, right? But that car story ties into the idea of candies, how I sold candies. That's pretty much what we're doing here. And every single story that's here is what is going to happen, right? So story one, story two, story three. Each of the points of each story should relate back to the start. So let me kind of draw this out to make this have sense. So each of these points should be going back into the main idea of the entire video, which is how do you find your purpose? How do you find your purpose? How do you find your purpose? That's what we did throughout this entire video. So first we said there's the Truman Show, right? We talked about how movies relate to how your life can be a movie. And then we talked about something else I forgot already. The video came out yesterday, I already forgot. And then we said we invited someone who's actually a movie star, actually an actor, PJ's grandma, and like, okay, look, she lives a life like a movie. And then her point comes back to how you can find your purpose, how she made it, and how you can kind of find your purpose the way she did, because she lives an amazing movie-like life, literally. So each of the stories tied up to the main point. That's how it should be, because a lot of people don't do that. So here's kind of what I wrote down. Each point should be a story, and the story should relate to the big point and advance it. Right? So your whole thing is just you keep on telling stories. So what you're doing, the whole thing, I'm going to try to visualize this with my hands. The whole thing is a story. Your whole video is a story. And you're going to have mini stories in between. So think about Mr. Beast challenge, right? When Mr. Beast does challenges, he did one on an island, right? He's like, I gave my 100 million subscriber an island. So what is the big story? The big story is who gets the island, right? And in between, he had 3 mini challenges. And each of those mini challenges could have been a video in and of itself. So first it was, oh, who can light a fire first, right? And all of these, keep in mind, all of these advance to the big story, which is, oh, people are getting closer to the big island, right? So it starts off, first story. It's like, oh, who can light a fire first? Whoever lights the fire first can get on the boat for the next challenge, which will take you to the island, right? It's all advancing all of itself, right? So whoever won the first challenge, right? The point one is that it helped them get to the second story, which helps them advance towards the big point. All you're doing with all these mini stories in between, like I wrote here, story 1, story 2, story 3, all you're doing is trying to get to the big story, literally. Either that could be physically like Mr. Beast did, or through information. So when you're in an informational piece or informational niche, right? You're trying to advance to a big point. You're trying to give information to people so that they're able to piece together, oh, what's going to happen, right? That's kind of what we're doing in almost every story. That's what Mr. Beast does too. So first it was, okay, whoever lights the fire gets on the boat. If you get on the boat, complete that challenge, you can get to the island. And then whoever competes for the last challenge on the island wins the entire island. You're always advancing to that big point, which is trying to win the island. And every time there's stakes, there's a challenge that comes on, and a lot of people lose, go to the next one. A lot of people lose, go to the next one. Only one person can win at the end. So you're constantly trying to advance yourself to the end of the story, the big story, through mini stories. And each of those mini stories should always, always relate to that big one, every single time. So you should be asking yourself, every time you write a little story, or if you want to add a little point, what should they get away with at the end? What points do they need to succeed with what I'm trying to tell them? With getting them to reach where I want, to get them to this end point. And that's why I wrote here at the bottom, if you can see it, as many as needed. Just take as many stories as you need. So it could be story 1, story 2, story 3, story 4, story 5. And if you see really good movies, they have a bunch of these, right? And each story is kind of like the character. So for example, if you think about Avengers, right? It has Iron Man as one storyline, and then it has Spider-Man as another storyline, and then it has the Hulk as another, and it just all adds up into this big story where they all converge at the end to destroy Thanos, right? This is the Infinity War. I don't remember the movie, but all you're doing is taking all of these stories, think about like little individual lines, and you're trying to all converge on them to end at one point, right? And all of that point leads to the end, which is where you're trying to take your viewer. It's supposed to be a journey. So pretty much have a start, and at that start, decide on what you want the end to be, and then every story in between should have a point that relates to the start and gets you closer to the end. Just always keep that Mr. Beast example in mind, because that really helped me. So yeah, good luck.